Hey, what's up, everybody? This is an open discussion with C3 Films. My name is Chris, and this is.
Cheryl.
And today we're going to be talking about the Netflix show Midnight Mass. Now, I'm a little bit late to this party. Cheryl had already watched it way before me, but we're going to finally be able to talk about it because I've seen the first 3 episodes. So we are getting into spoiler territory for at least the first 3. So if you have not seen them, I would highly recommend to go and watch them on Netflix because it is a very good show. And the least you know about it, the more fun you're going to have. So let's go ahead and let's just jump right into this. There was something about the show that felt familiar. Let me start off with that. The first episode is one of the most well-crafted hours of television I've seen in a long time. And it's everything. It's the tone, this kind of dreary tone that's over the entire show. It's the dialogue. Everything that's said in the dialogue is played as if it's just random dialogue between characters that you're using to fill the time, but everything that's being said in the dialogue is a plant for something that's going to pay off either later in the same episode or later in a couple of episodes. Everything from the old man that wears like the hat and the jacket, and how he's just walking around town and blah blah blah, and we're sure that it's not someone else. From the dog nipping at the weird religious lady and her reaction to that, to the fact that corpses wash down from the upwards, from the behind that one kid's house, and he's the one that has to deal with it every time. To when the guy looks up and says, "I saw a really big albatross with giant wings just fly across my head." That's all of that. It's like such simple, like blink and you miss it moment pieces of dialogue, but it matters, and that is why this show is so much fun to watch. On top of just like the other things that you end up seeing in the conversation is super well written. And that's when I found out. Same person that did Haunting on Hill House is the same person that made Midnight Mass.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And if you haven't seen that, it's definitely much, much scarier than this show, but it's quite well crafted, and the storytelling is just like. And I think like it's the same team, it's the same cinematographer, and you can really feel that there's lots of long takes that are put together. And like I think the beauty in that is because it gives you a chance to really just focus on the people in the screen and less about like all the stuff, different things that are going on. It's really just about the characters. It's very character heavy. But then there's still like a good amount of like, I don't know if you would call it action, but like things that are happening,
Right.
like in the show itself. And so I think it was just very intriguing, and it's just beautifully shot. Like from I think one of my favorite things that they did was when Riley lays down and then he sees the body of the girl that he killed, but they turn the camera so that he looks vertical when he's laying down, and the girl, who's like basically a ghost zombie because she looks like how she would have looked right after the car crash, is vertical, but she's standing up. So like I thought that was cool. Like everything's just kind of turned all over the place. And he's haunted by this thing that he did that, you know, I guess you could say, you know, he didn't really do it on purpose because it was an accident, but he made bad choices. So he's still like guilty, and you know he goes to jail and everything. And but I just thought that was a really cool move.
Oh, absolutely. And like the show does a lot of interesting things like that. And even there's a lot of subtle storytelling that takes place. And that's another thing that I like. The show is not afraid to show you something and have it play as something insignificant, so that when you watch it again later, if you go back, you'll see this moment and notice it and be like, oh, they had already started planning this here. And the moment that I caught because like for whatever reason, I was just super tuned in. I was super tuned in when I'm watching the show, and so every little detail I'm paying attention to. And like when that moment when the was it Riley's mother, she's reading a book and she has her glasses on, and she takes her glasses off because she can see better without her glasses than she can see with them on. And at that moment, I said, people around this town are going to start to get healed. And because like we meet a bunch of different characters, some characters who are going through mental troubles, a character who's in a wheelchair. Like you can tell that this city has a lot of people who are not well off. And and it's such a short moment, but the moment that I saw that, the first thing I said was, I think people in this town are going to start to get slowly healed. And then that's how things proceed to happen. And to give a little context about the show is that it takes place on this island of like 127 people in the population. And these are people that are like interconnected, they know each other well, and they're just trying to live their lives. And it's kind of centered around this. Well, it's not necessarily centered around the church, but the church is a really big deal for a lot of the people that live on the island. And when a priest shows up that is a different priest than who they're used to, because their original priest left to go on a trip that they sent him on, and now they're being told that he's sick and won't be able to come back. But when this priest arrives, things start to change slowly around the island for everybody. And because of that, more people start going to church, and then more conversations get to start being had. And the conversations in this show are some of the most intriguing conversations and pieces of dialogue that you can experience between two characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you definitely have to pay attention to what they say, because like you mentioned, all the dialogue is quite purposeful, and you don't know when it's going to come up again, but it's all important information that you get. And there is a lot of dialogue. They do talk a lot. A lot of it is just conversation between different characters. But there's a lot going on in between that as well. And there's a lot of mystery. Like they show you things and you're like, wait, what was that? What'd they see? And I'm not sure how long it took you to figure out, or if you're still trying to figure out what is going on, or what is...
So I can tell you what I thought was happening was when the moment you see the cats, the first thing I say is vampire. So that was the first thing that I said. And we said we're getting into spoilers. So if you watch this far in the video, you guys should know by now. But the first thing that I thought when I saw the cats, I was like, this thing is a vampire. It has to be. But then I asked myself, wait a second, is it a vampire or is it a demon? And that's when I was like, And I thought that whatever it was, I thought that it would be the Monsignor. I thought it was the Monsignor Pruitt. I thought that he had left, became a vampire, was brought there, because also in the first episode, when you see the young person and then the young priest show up, he has what looks like a box, and he like knocks on it and something knocks back, or you hear the knockback sound. So what I thought was, I mean, it probably is what happened, but it hasn't been confirmed. But what I thought was he brought over a vampire, because you can only transport vampire in closed like caskets or closed things across the water. And then he let it out, and now this vampire, who is Monsignor Pruitt, is running around killing things, and eventually will start killing people. And that was my thought process, and I was only partially right.
Oh, and I can't wait for you to finish this. I almost wish that I had you watch the whole thing so that we could talk about it, because gosh, I'm not gonna spoil the ending, but man, the ending. If you guys have seen it already, you know what I'm talking about. But
I can only imagine.
The writing is so good, and I feel like it's a little underappreciated, because it's definitely not getting as much, like good review as The Haunting on Hill House, and I
Yeah.
would say like I guess I could kind of agree that it isn't as good, but it's pretty close up there. Like the writing is just very good, and the twists and turns. Like, okay, yeah, you're right. It is vampire. Vampirism is a thing in the show, but it's more complicated than that. So,
Well, see, so here's my thought process. So we're talking about like theories now, not necessarily the thing, but like, you know, when like, oh my god, the show's just so good. There's so many little moments. Like the kids come in to fill up the things for communion, and they find that they're already filled up on the day when the priest first arrives. And then other parts of dialogue where one of the kids says, "Hey, I haven't found any extra of our whatever the juice containers are that they hold for the communion. I haven't found them, and they used to be all over the place." And then the pastor says, "Oh, don't worry, I'll take care of it." And you see him dumping something from a flask in there. The moment I saw that, I said, "That's his blood." And at first, what I was thinking was, "Oh, he has some type of special ability that is healing people and causing him to die because of him healing people." But then, and the show reveals this pretty quick. It's like episode 3 where the show reveals what happened to the Monsignor. And once you find out that him and the Monsignor are the same person, the thing that then went through my head is, oh, the Monsignor is a vampire. And what he is doing is he's slowly giving his blood to everybody in the community, which is why he wants them to come to church and take communion. Because like when they drink his blood, that's what's healing them. And it's slowly like, because that's what's making the girl able to walk. That's what's making the mother like no longer have mental issues and everything else, like, and memory issues. And then I started thinking to myself, oh man, he's going to turn this entire island into an island of vampires. Oh no. So that's where I'm at in my thought process right now when it comes to this show.
right. See, I kind of thought that too, but then I asked myself, how could he be a vampire if he can walk around during the day?
Right.
So,
Yeah, and I asked myself that too, but after Twilight broke the rules of what I understood vampires to be, it's mainly just okay. It's whatever the rule of the show is, because even this show from Guillermo del Toro, I forget what it's called right now, but he dealt with vampires in that show, but it was different from how we normally know vampires to be. So I guess right now I'm at the point where I'm trying to figure out how much of what we know about the vampire is based in our own knowledge versus the show's own personal lore. Like, is it a thing of like the elder vampire can't go into sunlight, but anyone that was turned technically could? And like, I was wondering if the Monsignor was getting sick because he wasn't feeding on blood. So, because I'm just thinking about like vampire, vampire, vampire. But regardless of what the answer ends up being, I appreciate the show in the first 3 episodes because it gave me a different take on a vampire. And the moment that the Monsignor called the vampire an angel, I like got chills because I'm just like, oh my gosh, that is scary as heck. You have someone who is religious that sees a vampire as an angel and wants to use this thing as a way of trying to help people when this thing kills people. Where is this gonna go? But this is so interesting to me because vampires are old and like this. It's a formula that we've seen over and over again, but it's a vampire in a new context, and that's what has me excited.
right. I feel like I can't talk to you about it because I know the ending.
Well, how about this? How about you tell me you rewatched the first 3 episodes, right?
Yeah.
So rewatching it, were there things that you didn't pick up on at first that you then picked up on a second viewing? And how do you just generally feel about those first 3 episodes from just an entertainment standpoint?
Honestly, when I first watched it, I was like, oh, whatever. I don't really care about this. It's kind of slow. What a drag. And then it got like super interesting. for me after episode 3. So,
Wow.
but like going back, like watching it now, I could see like wow, like if I was like actually truly giving it my all watching this show, I would be like totally into it because I totally am. Like I want to finish watching it again because it's good. Like I'm watching it. I want to watch it a second time, especially now that I know what happens at the end. So it's it's more exciting for me now. But I mean, there's just a lot of cool stuff in there. I really do like the way that it was shot. Like the photography is so good, and so is the music. And I know we haven't talked about like good music in a while for some of the stuff that we've been watching, but the music, like, it reminds me a lot of Jaws.
Yeah,
Doesn't
that's a
it?
good comparison.
I definitely feel the inspiration there, but it's so good. Like it's still its own thing. It's like a theme. Like if you'd play the score from not the music, like the songs that they use, but if you play the actual score of it, I'd be like, that's Midnight Mass, and I'm scared.
Yeah, it evokes such a creepy tone in some of these cases. Like I'm listening to the music or just like the ambient sounds, and it really builds a sense of dread. And one of the things that was done very well in Haunting of Hill House is just the feeling of unease. And the thing that Haunting of Hill House had going for it outside of like the story and the characters is that they did this thing where they hid Ghost in the frame for you to maybe
Spoiler
miss
alert.
completely. Hmm?
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, sorry. But they're hidden ghosts in the show. And that adds to the extra feeling of there's something uneasy about this shot or there's something creepy. And they don't do it to the same level in Midnight Mass, but there's shots where they just show you just a thing, just a frame, and your eyes are drawn to certain areas, and then all of a sudden you see something move, and it's just like really quick moments. It's and like in this case, they're not trying to hide it; they want you to eventually see the thing move. But the whole idea of basically hiding a creature in plain sight that you don't notice until it's too late is something that is prevalent in this writer's style, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's kind of what one of the things that got me initially is like basically you get to see the creature in like what episode
Two.
3 or 2,
Well,
right? Well, you
you
kind of see
see
it.
more of it in
Like
episode two.
you see more and more of it as the show progresses, but then you actually like really see it. Like they give you a lot of time seeing it in the 3rd episode. So when you think about it, it's like, guys, it's only episode 3 and they're already revealing all of this to us. What more do they have in store?
Yeah, and as like that's exactly what I was thinking. And then for you to say that it wasn't until after episode 3 that you got into it, like really got into it, and I'm already this into it from the first 3 episodes. The first thing I'm asking myself is what the heck else is going to happen in this show? Because like you said, like this reveal that the Monsignor is the same person as the new priest is usually something you would see stage for like the last couple of episodes of a season, and we're seeing it in in the first third. Like, oh my gosh, well then that must mean you have something else that you think is more important or more mind-blowing for me to have to like experience later on, that this you can just tell me right now.
Exactly. So I almost feel like we should have a follow-up episode because it is a limited series. So it's almost like you watched half of the movie and then decided to do the show. So, I mean, I wouldn't be, unless you guys are opposed to it, I wouldn't be opposed to having a part 2 of Midnight Mass because this is literally just the beginning. And I don't, it's just so, like, it's truly hard to talk about it with you right now because I literally can't say anything that, you know, to say, like, why I like the series so much. because I will ruin everything for you.
Okay. Well, let me bring up something else that I thought is interesting. So the the story has a lot of characters that fall on various sides of religion, and you can't get away from the religious tones in the story. And one of the interactions that I find the most interesting in these first three episodes is the relationship between the priest and, is it Riley, the main character, the guy? And so they have some conversations about belief, and there's a couple of conversations that happen like that in the show. And normally when I watch a movie or something or television show about someone who's lost their faith, it feels like the story is going to try to take them in a direction that will lead them back to it. So I'm wondering if this is what's going to be done with Riley's character. But it's weird because, so they have their conversations, and their conversations are very interesting. It's a very nice debate. It might not feel fulfilling for one side more than the other, but I think from my perspective it felt like a very interesting conversation between two people. But based off of where the show seems to be going with who the Monsignor is and this vampire creature and how they're using religion, I would be very surprised if the show rounds Riley back to finding his faith, because right now the faith isn't even pure because it's being almost kind of perverted by these inhuman like beings.
No comment.
Well then, in the first episode, how about this? In the first episode, were there any other like scenes or conversations that really stood out to you? Because the other one that stood out to me is the conversation between the little girl, the young girl, and the guy that shot her. Like, it's in a very emotional scene where she's talking to the man that crippled her, and now she's able to walk. And I remember thinking to myself, like, after I watched that scene, I was doing this. I was like, oh my gosh, this is heavy as heck. I need a minute. Like, the acting is so well done across the board. But that scene so far, to me, that one and the conversation between the priest and Riley are two standout scenes for me acting wise, because I felt it. I felt uncomfortable. I felt like how powerful what they were saying was, and I almost felt like when she says those words, "I forgive you," which is where I knew it was going, even though I knew she was leading towards "I forgive you," the act of her saying it still hit, and I was like, "This is something else. This is incredible."
Yeah, I think, it's hard to say because I can't really quite say that that particular scene is of great significance to the story, besides being the outlet to welcome that guy back into the community.
Right.
So, I mean, but yeah, it was definitely crazy. I mean, the acting in this whole show is just very good, and I have I know some of these actors from other shows playing completely different characters, and I'm just like, wow, it's like crazy to be seeing them play these roles because they're so different, and I almost feel like it's like given them a chance to really explore a deeper connection to their characters.
Right.
The girl who plays Erin, she's also in Haunting at Hill House.
Yeah.
And she's awesome. I think she does great. I'm glad that she got casted in this as well. But she's definitely one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, she's great, and she just reminded me of another character I like, which is Sharif, like Omar Sharif, the guy who is the sheriff. And another good scene, we don't have to get into the specifics of it, but the scene where they're talking in the school about the fact that this woman was giving out Bibles to the children. I won't go into the specifics of what they say in that scene, but let me say, oh my gosh, these actors are great, and the actor that plays Sharif, I mean, he brings an intelligence and a cleverness to this character that you can't just help but admire. You're listening to him talk, and you're listening to the things that he's saying, and you're listening to the points that that he's making, and you're just like, got him. This is perfect. These other people, you're like dancing around these people. This woman can't even keep up with what you're doing because you're just too smart. Which makes it more frustrating when the people around him don't seem to get what this woman does to counter his argument, despite the fact that his argument is not any less valid by what she says than it was the moment that he first started speaking. And
he's like the one person of color, and like he's very much an outsider because he's like the only Muslim guy on the island, and they definitely point that out many times.
Right.
And I that given too much away.
Okay.
I do like that they have this other representation of a different religion, because they definitely are challenging religion in this show, and like morality and like how people think, and use religion to think about how, like, what's the right thing, like what is right and wrong, what is acceptable and not acceptable, and how religion like changes the way people think. So it's kind of cool to have this side by side where like the island is predominantly Catholic, and then you have the sheriff who is Muslim, and not only is he Muslim, but he's also a person of color. So there's a lot of parallels there. I mean, there's not a lot of people of color in this show, but I appreciate where they went with it for his character, I guess.
I mean, if we're being honest, there are more in this show than there were in season 1 of Haunting of Hill House.
That's true.
So I also like the fact that I don't know if drawing comparison is the right term, but they allow you to learn more about the Quran specifically that I did not know before, to the point where when he was explaining what the Quran actually was, I couldn't help but think to myself, this makes sense. And I liked the fact that somebody who has more knowledge and more of experience within the Christian faith was able to listen and sit down and given the opportunity to actually understand in a show a faith that I admittedly don't know anything about.
Yeah.
So I appreciated the show taking the time to even have that scene as a way to inform the characters within the show, but it also informed me as someone who had never heard it expressed in this way. And I couldn't help but think to myself, I understand why someone would believe this and follow this based off of what you're saying right now.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing that I think they did really well in terms of the writing of the show and the character development in the show. Particularly in the first episode, I think they do a fantastic job of establishing the characters for, like, basically everyone, like how each person is, like how they will behave, and then putting them in situations and scenes and conversations where they literally like bump heads, right? Like the I forget her name, but the church lady.
Oh, Bev, that's her name. Bev Key.
Bev and the sheriff, they totally bump heads because they are very strong believers in two different faiths, and so they are butting heads, and there's a lot of that like set up in the show, and I think it's kind of crazy how well each character is defined just in the first episode, and then just tossing them all together and seeing how they are just bouncing off of each other in everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm almost out of breath because I feel like I've expressed so much excitement about this show. So if you guys don't know, I love it. I love it so far. I haven't even finished it. I don't even know if I'm halfway. I don't know how many episodes are in the season, but I'm just excited to be able to keep watching. So I am going to keep watching. But we are coming up on time here. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up before we get out of here?
I was just gonna say, my first problem with it when I was watching it the first time is
Mhm.
I felt like they couldn't decide if they wanted to have the show be a scary show, or or not. Like I was like, is it supposed to be scary or is it just really bad jump scares and such? Because I'm a big chicken, but I didn't think it was scary. I think
Yeah.
like it's creepy. Like I don't think I want to watch it at night, but but it's not like I can't watch Hill House because that is very scary, despite the story being fantastic.
Right. I think
But
that you're right. I think it's more creepy than scary, but I almost feel like that's because the writer can't get away from his horror roots. I feel like he's just really attached to that kind of storytelling and genre that he has to try to lean into it a little bit, even though admittedly this show is nowhere near as scary as the first season of Hill House. And to be fair, the second season of Hill House isn't as scary as the first season of Hill House, and that's the same type of show, even though it's an anthology.
right. Oh man. But yeah, I just feel like I couldn't figure out what the vibe was supposed to be. But it becomes more clear, especially now that they have revealed so much by the third episode. So all
Mm-hmm.
of the I feel like it begins with scary tactics, but now that everything is revealed, like what is left?
Can happen.
Yeah. So
Uh,
we'll find out next
Whew,
time on
I'm
See
about
Three
to watch.
Films.
Yeah, I'm about to watch this before I go to bed tonight. But what about you guys? Have you seen Midnight Mass, and have you seen the previous works by the writer of Haunting on Hill House? But like, do you enjoy them? Do you think that the Midnight Mass is a superior show? Do you not like it as much as Hill House, or do you think that they're just two different things and you kind of appreciate them for what they are? Whatever you think, whatever you thought, comment below. Let us know. And while you're down there, if you give us a like, share, and subscribe. But even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, and we'll see you all next time.